Good afternoon.
En officieel mag alleen de rector en een intredende hoogleraar daar staan.
Die mag nog staan.
Dat was toen ik...
Good afternoon. Welcome to you all. Good afternoon. Welcome to the opening session of the 57th conference of the European Regional Science Association, Social Progress for Resilient Regions. My name is Tracy Metz. I have the honor of being your moderator today. I'm always thrilled to be invited to Groningen. I love it here. But I must say the trip was rather arduous today. How many of you got stuck in this huge train snafu? Fortunately, I'm not the only one. Are you all hot and sweaty still, or are you cool? You look pretty cool. I'm glad. As I said, my name is Tracy Metz. I have lived in the Netherlands for 37 years now. I'm originally from Los Angeles in California. And I'm a journalist, an author, presenter. I have a weekly radio talk show. I have a talk show in the Bali about urban issues, and I'm really interested in how we use the space that we have. That has turned out to be the theme of my work, I think because of the contrast between car heaven Los Angeles and bike heaven compact, lively, small historical cities like we know in Europe, of which Groningen, of course, is a wonderful example. So I have been very inspired by all the disciplines, which are the disciplines that you work on and study, and the reason that you're here today. So it's a great honor for me to be here. I'll be introducing our speakers. I'll have some questions for them, and I do very much hope that you'll have questions for them too. So be prepared and jump in as soon as the opportunity presents itself. I would like to present to you as our first speaker, before we move to our two keynote speakers, Paul Elhorst, who is the chair of the local organizing committee. Paul.
So, on behalf of all members of the local organizing committee, I would like to welcome you at the 57th ERSA Congress here in Groningen. About 800 people registered for this conference. I would also like to welcome our distinguished guests of today, who will be introduced later by Tracy Metz. Two persons I nevertheless would like to mention right now are the deans of the two faculties, the Faculty of Economics and Business and the Faculty of Spatial Sciences, because these two faculties have organized this conference. We have here Herman de Jong, the Dean of the Faculty of Economics and Business, and Oscar Kouwenberg, where is he? Over there, the Dean of the Faculty of Spatial Sciences. Well, as chair of the local organizing committee, I would like to stress three outstanding novelties of this conference. Please, Alain, can you show? First one, we have tried to do everything we can to improve the quality of this conference. How? Well, first by distinguishing several types of sessions. We have organized special young scientist and refereed sessions in which each paper gets 30 minutes of time. Each paper in those sessions has a discussant. So the 30 minutes includes the contribution of the discussant. To qualify for those sessions, you had to submit your full paper, your draft, and pay the fee for the Congress at the beginning of June. But in addition, we have ordinary sessions. So all the other people have ordinary sessions. But they all have plenty of time, because we have 1.5 hours, 4 papers in each session. Not more than 4, but no discussant. We have also tried to reduce the number of no-shows, because we don't like that. So based on the registration at the beginning of August, we have set up the program. But of course, no shows may always occur due to last moment cancellations. So what you need to do is consult our website, because there you can find the real-time program all the time. Every last minute change will be there. You can also download the Congress app. Put it on your mobile phone and use it during the conference. There you can find all the information. Instructions can be found on the website or in the program book. And experience share your experience with us with using Twitter on hashtag ERSA 2017 GR, and GR stands for Groningen. The second novelty. We are the first, and we are really proud of that, to have organized what we call a policy day. On Thursday, we start again with a plenary session here in this aula, in this building, just as today, with distinguished speakers from the European Commission, the OECD, and the European Investment Bank. This plenary session is followed by 2 workshops before the lunch break, 2 workshops after the lunch break, and at the end of the day, a roundtable discussion. On this policy day, you may also expect more local and national policy makers. Okay, the third novelty. We are among the first who have offered free use of exclusive daycare for children of the Congress participants. Maybe you have made use of it. Okay. Another topic. I would also like to take this opportunity to commemorate 2 persons. And the first one is Dirk Stelder. 2 years ago, when we started with the preparation of this Congress, Dirk was one of our colleagues who participated as member of the local organizing committee. And in this role, he was responsible for the catering, and which may not come as a surprise to you if you knew him, for the music. And this is a photograph taken last year at the ERSA conference in Vienna, when Dirk participated as guitar player in a jam session together with some other participants. And this is the way I would like to remember him, a man who was always enthusiastic. But except for that, he was also a great scientist. He published many papers on neo-economic geography, and I remember a great paper in 2012 in Papers in Regional Science about the local monopoly power of supermarkets. Please read it, because it's a fantastic article. Unfortunately, after this conference in Vienna, his health deteriorated suddenly quite fast, and on the 1st May of this year, he passed away. Well, I'm quite happy that we have today here Marion, his wife, over there, and one of his 2 sons, Luc Stelder, so that it feels as if he is still here today. The second person I would like to commemorate is Raymond Florax, another Dutchman. Yeah, most of you will know him as a spatial econometrician, but also as the editor-in-chief of Papers in Regional Science, a journal that he served, our flagship journal that he served for more than a decade. He passed away on the 1st March of May this year. His contributions to regional science, to the community, regional science community, were recently underlined by the European Investment Bank ERSA Award in 2014 and his election as Fellow of the Regional Science Association International in 2015. In 2005, Raymond became full professor at the Department of Agricultural Economics at the Purdue University in the United States, and that was also the place where his wife, Brigitte Waldorf, holds a full professorship. Now, to commemorate Dirk Stelder and Raymond Florax, on the next slide, please, I would like to ask you a short moment of silence. Okay, thank you. The next slide. A congress of this size would not be possible without any financial support. And in this respect, I would like to thank our sponsors. First, the lead sponsors, the municipality of Groningen, the province of Groningen, and the Ministry of Infrastructure and the Environment, as well as SNN, the Northern Netherlands Province Alliances, de NAM, Nederlandse Aardoliemaatschappij, the European Investment Bank, the Rabobank, Gasterra, and the Wadden Academy. In addition, I would like to thank the University of Groningen for making the lecture halls of this building, the Academy building, A-B, and the Harmonie complex, HC, at the other side of the street, where we will also be tomorrow, for making the lecture halls available. Lunches will be served in both buildings. And if you can't find it, we have all these wonderful students around here with their orange t-shirts and their badges stating, "Ask me." Okay. Well, finally, you may wonder, what is this? That's a dopper. It's the trophy of this Congress. You may use it during this conference. You may use it after it. You can fill it with water. You can refill it with water. So it's not necessary to use any plastic water bottles. Okay, so don't waste our environment. Well, I hope you like this trophy, and I hope you enjoy the Congress. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul Elhorst. And may I suggest that you don't forget to turn your phone back on after the end of our session today. I would now like to invite to the floor Oscar Kallenberg. He is standing in for Rector Elmer Sterke, who unfortunately was able to join us. Thank you for joining us. Oscar is the Dean of the Faculty of Spatial Sciences.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, our rector was not so fortuitous to pick up the taxi on the way from Zwolle, where the train was stuck, to Groningen. So they asked me to stand in his part here today. So that is what I'm going to do for you today. Dear participants of the 57th European Regional Science Association Congress, welcome to Groningen and welcome to the University of Groningen. We feel honored to host the Congress here in the most popular student city of the Netherlands. Congratulations to the local organizing committee for an excellent program and excellent speakers. And in my welcome remarks, I'd like to share some facts about our university and the building we are in right now. The University of Groningen is a comprehensive classical research-oriented university. The university dates from 1614, a time when the Netherlands was still at war with Spain. With the University of Leiden, we are the oldest universities in the country. Today, we have about 30,000 students, more than 6,000 staff members, and a budget of over 700 million euros a year. And to give you an impression of our quality of our research, the University of Groningen ranks at position 59 of the Shanghai Academic Ranking of World Universities 2017. And this ranking is largely based on productivity in research and prize-winning performance. And in that respect, I am proud to mention that one of our professors in chemistry, Ben Veringa, has won the 2016 Nobel Prize for Chemistry for his discovery of the nanomotor. We also have famous alumni, and I'd just like to mention a few. Wim Duisenberg, the first president of the European Central Bank, and Epke Zonderland, who won the gold medal at the London 2012 Olympic Games at the high bar in gymnastics. The building we are in today is the Academy building, which dates from 1909. This building is the center building of our university and has been built with the financial support of the municipality of Groningen and the province of Groningen, reflecting the strong regional interaction that we have. On the same location, the university was hosted first in a typical cloister in the 17th century. After that, around 1850, a first main building has been constructed, but during repair work, it caught fire in 1906. So this one is now from 1909. You can see all the buildings on the stained glass in the central stairs hallway, if you like, when you go outside. This here is the aula. Here we organize PhD defense ceremonies and inaugural lectures. Behind me you can see a painting called The Tree of Wisdom by Matthijs Reuling and Wout Müller. The figures climb the Tree of Wisdom and become more pure at the top, as you can see. In the stained glass windows you can see part of the history of the university. In the middle one, above the doors, there's a special window donated by a former queen, Wilhelmina, who was awarded an honorary doctorate in 1914. Above the doors you can see signs with Latin remarks like non scholae sed vitae, not only for the school, but for life. Last but not least, I'd like to thank you for coming to Groningen. Please feel welcome at our university and enjoy your congress. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Dean Kouwenberg, for your kind words. And I would now like to invite Alderman of Social Affairs of the City of Groningen, Roeland van der Schaaf, to give opening remarks.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Groningen. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all to our city. As Alderman, I am delighted that Groningen is hosting this international conference on regional economy. As you have noticed, Groningen is a never-aging city, populated by people from all over the world. They are attracted by what our city has to offer. A lively atmosphere, a top-ranked university with over 400 years of history, a well-known University of Applied Sciences, and a wealth of high-tech research and industry projects that provide unique opportunities for the next generation. Groningen is a truly international university town, a future that gives it its great appeal and ambience. Groningen is young, vibrant and creative, innovative and multicultural. In total, 55,000 students are studying in a total population of over 200,000 that make Groningen both the youngest but also the brainiest city in the Netherlands. They bring life and creativity to our city, as well as many, many bicycles. Sometimes with a bike congestion in the inner city as a result, especially as a beautiful day as today is. But the question is, can we still guarantee the well-being and prosperity of our citizens and city? That's your team. Your team this year is Social Progress for Resilient Regions. And the question is Groningen a resilient region? So better? Yeah. The city is changing. We are facing real problems, the shrinking region. But on the other hand, the required educational level for the labor market continues to rise. So Groningen has also a great, marvelous startup scene. Well-being and prosperity require that we are building on our next city, a city that is ready for the future. We are investing over more than 2 billion euros the next 5 years in infrastructure, buildings and public space. All with the goal that Groningen is the economic center of the northern parts of the Netherlands. Together with our partners as university, the Hanse Hogeschool for Applied Sciences and the University Medical Center Groningen and the entrepreneurs, we are in a dedicated cooperation that leads us to an international ranking of high standards. Ladies and gentlemen, there's one social problem I would like to mention because of its great significance. and that's the growing socio-economic divide. This divide leads to different health situations and life expectancies among our inhabitants. Reducing this divide, in my view, is one of our primary political and societal challenges for the future. But I am fully aware that the local government cannot do this alone. We need partners, allies. In fact, we need all of you. A truly resilient region requires a city that is adaptable and flexible. Our aim is to have an adaptable physical city structure that can cope with change, move with the times, and open up new opportunities. We are open to new developments, new ideas, and new technologies. But a truly resilient city has also international contacts. Good international accessibility is of fundamental importance for economic development. With an eye to this, we recognize the necessity to have fast physical links with the rest of the Netherlands and also with Germany. But it also, a resilient city, offers room to experiment. So we as a city offer room for experiments, innovations and living labs, particularly in the fields of major social challenges such as the energy transition, healthy aging and sustainable food production. And will Groningen be able to do all of this? Our young population has an entrepreneurial spirit and a strong early adapter attitude, crucial ingredients in making us resilient. We also generate knowledge that acts as a source of inspiration for policy and other issues, as well as a testing ground for what does and doesn't work. And this is why this beautiful conference, this good conference, fits right in here in Groningen. As I said, welcome to Groningen. I sincerely hope that you will take your positive experience home with you, that you will treasure your memories of Groningen, and that you will share them with your colleagues, your friends, and your families. And finally, I would like to thank the organization for the excellent preparations they have made for this conference. My compliments. But above all, I wish you all an inspiring, fruitful, and pleasant conference.
Thank you, Alderman van der Schaaf. I'll bet you wrote that sentence about the good physical links with the rest of the country before you knew what was going to happen today with the trains.
Yeah, yes, I made a speech before it, so maybe I had to skip it. But
It's wishful thinking.
It's wishful thinking, but it shows again why this is very important. Yeah.
True, true. Thank you very much. Okay. And now for our final introduction, Jouke van Dijk, the president of the ERSA until the end of next year. And Jouke, if I'm not mistaken, you're going to be really sorry to give it up because you love this, huh?
Oh yes, but after 5 years sometimes you have to quit. Okay, welcome to Groningen. That's what you expect, of course, in a welcome speech. But as president of the European Regional Science Association, it's a great pleasure for me to welcome you all at the 57th Congress because it's in my hometown, Groningen. A special welcome to all of you, but especially to Professor Venables, who gives the keynote lecture in this session. And I also want to say welcome to the people in the Senate room, because you are all here, you are live, but some people are watching this in the next room because the room was completely filled. Also welcome in the other room. ERSA is happy to be back in Groningen. For me personally, it's the third time I experience a regional science conference in Groningen. The first one was in 1982, then in 1994, and we had summer schools in 2001 and 2006. And every time I had the pleasure to be involved. 1982 was my first international conference where I first presented a paper which I was very nervous. Even more nervous than here, because at some point you get used to these kind of things. In 1994, I was the secretary of the local organizing committee, And now I'm here as the president, so it has a certain sequence, and it's very pleasant. If you look at the size of the conference, in 1982, I think it was about 200. In 1994, it was about 300. And now we are with 800. But we are still in the same location. The opening sessions were always in this room. And the parallel sessions were in the Harmonie complex. And I'm very happy that we can keep this conference very compact. It's all in walking distance. Most of the hotels are very close by. The Congress dinner will be very close by, so it's very compact. And you cannot get lost as long as you don't cross a bridge over the canals and you keep an eye on yellow stones, you are in the right area. Groningen is a well-known center of regional science in the world for many years. In the beginning, regional scientists in Groningen were spread, from the beginning they were spread over two faculties. Faculty of Spatial Sciences, which is Geography, Demography, Planning. At that time, at the first Congress, it was called the Geographical Institute, and with the Faculty of Economics. It started in the early 70s with Jan Oosterhaven from the group of Regional Economics, and soon after that Kees Bartels joined, and from Economic Geography Henk Volmer and Piet Pellenberg. They also became involved, so it has always been a cooperation of the two faculties for I think 40, 50 years. And it's a great pleasure for me that Jan, Henk and Piet are here and are still actively participating in this Congress and as here as our special guests. Nowadays in Groningen a large group of scholars is active in the field of regional science. Many of them regularly attend the international conferences all over the world. They publish in the well-known journals about a broad variety of topics: input-output analysis, productivity analysis, new economic geography, entrepreneurship, spatial econometrics, regional labor markets, environmental issues, migration, rural development, you name it, and there are specialists here in Groningen who work on this. And they are also active in the regional science community. There are highly cited leading scholars in various fields. They are editors of journals like Papers in Regional Science, Journal of Regional Science, Spatial Economic Analysis, letters in Spatial and Resource Sciences, Population, Space and Place. All have been, editor-in-chief have been based here in Groningen. And what is also very nice is that there has always been a strong connection with policy. Not only at the regional level, but also at the international level. And a lot of people do research and advise governments and bodies with their knowledge, and that's very important. And there were very well respected scholars. Jan Oosterhaven, Henk Volmer and Philip McCann are all appointed as RSAI Fellows, which is a distinction for excellent scholarship. So I think in Groningen we do quite well in this field. Many of you also have been here before, sometimes as a PhD who visits us, but sometimes as a postdoc for workshops. We have a lot of lunch seminars, some as external PhD examiner, and we are very happy that a lot of you are here now, 800 people, and we can discuss the state of the art in the field. There will be 700 presentations in these 3 days which follow. More than 200 sessions, and the participants come from 48 countries and over 100 are coming from outside Europe. So we are really an international community here. And this makes the ERSA conference the largest regional science meeting in the world. Now, for regional science, the interaction with policy has always been very important. We cooperate with the European Union, we organize lectures, we have workshops, and this year we have a special policy day. We had the already mentioned road to ERSA with meetings here in the region preceding to the conference. We are also very happy that a lot of young scholars attend our conference. We have special sessions on Wednesday for PhD students, and they can win the Epinos Prize for the best paper presented and probably the best paper written for young scholars. So it's good that these young scholars interact with the older people, but also with the policymakers. The cooperation with the university was very important, that we could be in this nice building, but also with the province, with the ministry, with the municipality, and with several other organizations which were so kind to sponsor us, but also to help us organize sessions on the policy day on the relevant topics for the north of the Netherlands, but also with an international dimension. So we were very happy with this cooperation, and thanks for that. To conclude, I wish you all a pleasant stay and a fruitful participation in this very nice conference in my hometown. I hope you will also have some time to enjoy the city. The city is very vibrant. The temperature is very nice now to have a beer on a terrace, and it was promised to me that it will be very nice weather till late. And the next days might be a bit more rain, so take your chance, but also be present tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock when the sessions start. That was what I wanted to share with you, and now we go to the really serious business. Thank you.
Thank you, Jouko. And now, it is an honor to present to you our first keynote speaker of today, Tony Venemels, economist at Oxford, and he'll be talking about the urbanization of developing countries.
Good. Thank you, and obviously let me start off by thanking the people who've brought me here and made this happen. So Joop, the organising committee, thank you, the university and the city, indeed, for their involvement with this. It's my second time in Groningen. I think the weather was much the same last time, really rather nice. So it's a pleasure to be here. Urbanisation in developing countries. I hope I can see my own slides. If not, my glasses are going to be coming on and off the end of my nose at an alarming rate as we go through this. But let's see how we go. Obviously a very wide open title, mainly because I was asked to come up with a title many months ago when I didn't know what I was going to talk about. But a really important topic that I and a group of us in Oxford with ERSA and the World Bank have been working on pretty intensively over the last couple of years. It's always good to start with some motivation for why your topic is so desperately more important and interesting than anybody else's. So let me do that, and I think I can do that in one slide, which is really just giving you the numbers. Or, well, not really the numbers, the projections of the numbers, the future numbers, insofar as we know what urban populations actually are, the numbers that are projected for urban population growth around the world. So on the left-hand side of that figure, or that sort of central column, you see the obvious things, Europe, Latin America, the Caribbean, North America, flattening out, as we know. And then you see the developing world on the right-hand side. So Asia, by virtue of aggregation, being much the largest area and population there, and having passed a point of inflection, I think if you look at that graph carefully, by 2050. But it's running out to 2050. I hope people can see the axes running out from 1950 to 2050. So Asia there, and then Africa in the bottom right, that of course hasn't even reached a point of inflection by 2050. So phenomenally fast urbanization going on in Africa. And on the right hand side there, some of the raw numbers. India, 200,000 people per week entering cities. Africa up to 350,000 a week projected. I wish I could see these slides better. The total African urban population trebling by 2050. So within 30, 35 years, right? Really short time period. The stock of built urban Africa has to treble. They have to build twice as much more over the next 30 years as they have in the whole of past history. Or putting it even more vividly, that number, whatever it is, 500 to 600 million, that's about, that's not much less than the total urban population of Europe and North America combined. So in some sense, they've got to build that in 30 years, right? So that's the motivation. When you think of big topics to work on, there's climate change out there, number one, where have anything else? And urbanization in the developing world, in Africa, number two, frankly. The numbers are there, and they're shocking, really. Okay. So what am I going to do in this talk? Well, I'm going to focus on Africa. It's not going to be about the developing world as a whole. I'm going to focus on Africa for reasons that I think were apparent from the previous slide, proportionately much the largest increase to come. And also, of course, hasn't gone very well so far. African urbanization can hardly be held up, sub-Saharan African urbanization can hardly be held up as a great success. And obviously I'll be talking about some of the facts, some of what's gone wrong there. So it's going to be mainly about Africa, and it's going to be mainly intra-city stuff I'm going to be talking about. So I'm not going to be talking about the determinants of migration, of urbanization and migration flows. It's going to be focused much more on cities and what's right and what's wrong with them. Why are they not working very, very well in Africa, and possibly what can be done about it. Okay, so the way I want to organize the talk. I'm going to just run through, I think, 5 sort of stylized facts, again, sort of setting the stage, but on what we know about African urbanization. Just 5 rather aggregate, big picture things, but I think they're important. Then I want to switch to actually discussing a couple of research papers in some detail. I've already mentioned there's this Oxford LSE World Bank project, so I want to talk about a couple of papers. I'm well aware there's a somewhat sort of risky strategy here. I'm sort of balancing the quite broad, big picture stuff with some detail and a tight time constraint. But let's give it a shot. So I'll go through a couple of papers, well, not in great detail, but in a way that I hope will communicate the main ideas in the paper. And then I'm going to end up with some sort of policy messages in a rather scattergun sense, frankly, but some of the things that I think are important and things that have come up a lot in conversation with, with policymakers in the region in Africa. Okay, so stylized facts. Let's start with people and then move on to sort of capital and things like that. Starting with people. What do we know? Yeah, urbanization in the developing world is faster than it has been historically in other regions. Yeah, about twice the rate that it was in Europe at the peak during the 19th century. So the numbers there, urban population in the developing world sort of doubling every 18 years or so, where it was only half that rate in European history. Looking at Africa, the rate of population increase in the 1970s, urban population increase around about 6% per annum, obviously from a lower base back then, and running at around 4% per annum now. Both those time periods are about 2% per annum slower than the rate of urban population increase in Asia. So it is kind of almost unprecedentedly fast. I say almost unprecedentedly. Latin America in the 60s hit some pretty big numbers, but it's fast. Another point on sort of population and people, when you look carefully into where the people are coming from them, it's slightly more a natural increase within the city, fertility within the city, than it is actually migration to cities. Obviously it's both things going on, but surprisingly and perhaps a bit disconcertingly, the sort of urban demographic transition that one expects, and indeed one hopes for, really hasn't come about yet. So these high rates of natural population increase. And I should cite Remy Jedwab and others for having worked on that a lot and really unearthed some interesting facts there. So that's, oh yeah, one other thing before I move on. Yeah, also, right, we've got this faster growth, continuing natural increase, not demographic transition, and also occurring at lower per capita income levels. Now, I don't know if this is particularly visible. The thing on the right here, GDP per capita on the horizontal, urban share of population on the vertical, and these trajectories through time, but mapping income against urbanization for some Asian countries. Nigeria is the pale blue line. It's essentially going straight up. Not much economic growth per capita at least, but urbanization. Côte d'Ivoire actually going backwards. Tanzania, so a couple of African countries. Yeah, but the real point there is it's happening at low per capita income levels. Okay, so that was stylized fact 1, or I suppose I should say set of stylized facts 1. 2, let's move to capital. Okay, so you're urbanizing, and urbanization is a pretty capital-intensive activity. Asian countries, some East Asian, have done it really rather successfully, I would argue. But of course, they've done it with savings rates at 45% or 50% of GDP in China, and generally, well up in the high 30s and 40. Whereas the savings rate in Africa is half that, right? It's 20% or less. So you've got the people coming in and the capital not there, right? That's the fundamental problem. Now, I don't have great data on urban capital accumulation in Africa. It's not there. It's published, broken down geographically in that way. But what I've done here is just some little sort of back of envelope simulations. Let's think of a migration process going on. So there's years on the horizontal axis. So let's start at a point where you're just 10% urbanized and have a migration and natural fertility thing going on that takes the share of the urban population up to 80%. And let's ask what the investment to income ratio would have to be, given some assumptions about the capital output ratio in agriculture and the capital output ratio in urban, right? So the bottom line there is an urban capital output ratio of 5, top line's urban capital output of 10. Both of those, the point here, of course, is they've got a whopping great hump in the middle, right? You're going from a sort of initial position where your investment to income, just on that urban bit, right? There's no depreciation, no other stuff, right? Just on the urban stuff. It goes from, to 10 or 15%. It sort of more than doubles as you're having to put in the capital stock for all this extra urban stuff, okay? Now, what is the capital output ratio? I don't know. You can do some back of envelope things with, how much would it cost to build a decent house, put in decent infrastructure? There's no machinery or equipment there. This is just the capital fabric of the city, right? 10's too high. 5 is not unreasonable at all if you think, what did it take, if you were to build moderately decent housing and the people living in that housing are only making $1,000 or $2,000 a year, then, a decent house is at least 10 or 15. So, 5 or there in between. So we don't know that much about capital accumulation numbers in cities, but it's a pretty obvious, no-brainer point that with that rate of increase of urban population and a higher capital output ratio, building capital output ratio in urban areas than rural, you're going to have a hump that you're going to be very, very challenged to meet. Probably more interesting to break down the capital stuff into components. Now, thinking about these cities, it's helpful, I always find it helpful to think of 3 sort of capital stocks, 3 driving elements. One is residential, the other is public/infrastructure, and the third is business, right? So it's going to be the interplay of those three things is going to run through a lot of my thinking, a lot of this talk. So let's do them in some order. Well, residential first. Okay, residential capital accumulation in Africa. What do we know about it? Well, the overwhelming fact that hits you as soon as you go there is that there is essentially no low-income formal housing. There's formal housing at the high end for the elite, and there are slums for everybody else. So if you think of 19th century Europe or something, well, sure, there were slums, but just this complete absence of what you think is the largest part of the housing stock is quite astonishing. The numbers there are, as you see, I hope, percentage of urban population in slums running from, well, South Sudan, Juba was just a couple of mud huts before independence, whatever it was, 10 or 12 years ago. So it's not surprising that South Sudan is more than 90% slum. But the Africa average is that sort of funny colour line in the middle. And it's 60-odd% in slums, informal housing. Lots of reasons for that I'm not going to go into in detail, but let me just list them. I mean, it's sort of obvious but important. One is land tenure stuff, right? Customary tenure systems have been sort of modernised, but in the process of that, not really not unambiguously clarified. So very often competing claims, great uncertainty. So big deterrent to building if you don't know who owns the land you're building on. So just that lack of clarity in land tenure. Really inappropriate regulation. So the I forget the exact numbers. The minimum plot size in a lot of African countries, or a lot of certainly Anglophone African countries, was inherited directly from Britain shortly after Britain had raised it dramatically in a fit of sort of post-war prosperity, right? So it's some ridiculous minimum plot size. So basically, 99%, well, not 99%, there's some high-end formal housing, but the vast majority of the housing stock in these countries is illegal. It doesn't meet the building regulations because the standards are just hopelessly wrong. So basically you have regulations and then they're ignored, but that's really damaging because you do want basic building regulations and things for lots of obvious reasons. What else? Failure in the supporting markets. For housing to work, you need capital markets, you need mortgages. Markets not working well. But also, I come back to the underlying thing here. You're urbanising at a low level of income. Urbanisation has this huge capital requirement. So, what actually is the minimum cost of building a low-income formal house? $10,000, $15,000 maybe. It's expensive. Let me put that one out of the way. I'm not using it. I rather like this picture. It's a sort of featureless smudge. So from the back, it just looks like a totally featureless smudge. Okay, so it's an aerial photograph of Luanda, or parts of on the edge of the capital of Angola. But as you fly into African cities, you often see something quite like that. So there are lots of tin roofs. There's a sort of road you can make out, but as you can see, no real layout, no real infrastructure, just single-story sprawl. Okay, so you've got a bit of density in the downtown area, and then this flat sprawl. But what can I say? Los Angeles on a bad day, right? You haven't even got the roads or anything. It's just scatter of single-story stuff. These capital stocks, residential, business, urbanisation without industrialisation. Well, I said that formal sector housing was largely missing. Low-income formal sector housing was largely missing. Well, tradable manufacturing production is pretty much absent as well. So, when you think of the development process, you think, China, Bangladesh, getting labour-intensive export industries, right? And that really powering job growth. largely absent is not a huge, it's a bit of an overstatement, but well, depends how you interpret largely. Very, very little tradable manufacturing production, and a number that's gone down over the years with, I regret to say, with trade liberalisation and opening to competition. So I've put some numbers there comparing Asian and African cities. The graphs at the bottom, if you can make out quadratic fitted lines, so horizontal axis is urbanization rate, vertical is manufacturing share of GDP, non-Africa developing on the left, Africa developing on the right. So you're way down. That's manufacturing as a whole. So a lot of that is beer and cement, it's non-tradables. If you actually think, what's the internationally tradable stuff, it's down again, okay? So yeah, again, these activities that we really think of as creating jobs, also having the agglomeration benefits, the productivity stuff and all that we know makes cities work, not there, at a first approximation. Okay, infrastructure and the public sector, just a couple of very, very obvious facts, I think. Building cities, factories are capital intensive, houses are capital intensive, infrastructure is capital. So transport, ICT, water, sanitation, power and all that. The sort of numbers people come up with, the Africa Commission or the World Bank or whatever, need of maybe to bring it up to reasonable standards over a 30, 40-year time horizon, numbers like $90 billion a year, which is 15% of GDP, right? Now, that's back to my investment over income when I was talking about housing. This is just infrastructure, another 15% of GDP going there. So it's massive capital intensity. And again, reasons for failure in the past, of which the first, which should be there, is simple lack of affordability. You can't afford it. But also policy failures, not getting hold of public finance, the public finances to raise the tax revenue to do the infrastructure. Experiments with privatisation that generally have not gone well, and generally weak government problems. Okay, those are the 5 stylized facts I wanted to give you, pretty stylized. So, research agenda. As I've already said, I find it helpful to think in terms of these three capital stocks, 3 elements, the residential, the firms, the infrastructure. Obviously, we need lots of people doing lots of in-depth studies of these things and lots of natural experiments on what works on housing or education or roads or the effect of transport, whatever. We certainly need that. I'm an applied economic theorist, so I don't get too involved with the data if I can avoid it. But I really think we need conceptual frameworks for thinking about these issues. So for me, and most of what I want to talk about for the rest of this talk is, we've got these stylized facts. How do we make them hang together? What do we think is really driving things? What are the implications? And then getting that understanding of the trade-offs, the processes in our heads so we can understand it, really understand what's going on. So my point of departure for that is the standard urban model, Alonzo Mills myth, whatever. So central business district, city growing out from it, commuting, rent, all these ingredients. So we've got that urban model in all our heads, I think. What do you need to add to it? Is that model fit for purpose, thinking about developing economies? What do we need to add? What do we need to do? Well, the list I've put there. First, obviously market failures and frictions. If the land markets aren't working, if you've got unclear tenure rights, that's a disincentive to build. Conceptually that stuff's pretty straightforward, but really, really important, okay? So market failures and frictions. A little bit more fundamentally, dynamics, right? I mean, basic urban economic theory is static, comparative static. yeah, unsurprisingly, it mainly developed in America in the sort of 60s and 70s, and the cities weren't growing that fast, right? So, you know, unsurprisingly, it's not really addressing dynamics. But of course, as soon as we get into dynamics, you get into expectations, particularly if things that are being accumulated are things like buildings, you know, which are long-lived sunk costs. You build on the basis of, you know, quite a long future life for that building. So, yeah, we've got to get dynamics into the theory, and you know, that means beginning to tangle with expectations and difficult things like that. And then, of course, complementarities. AKA, you know, agglomeration economies, localization economies, whatever they are. You know, we know that cities are cities, that they work, they're effective because of complementary benefits that one economic agent in the city gives to another. So firm-to-firm interactions, all the agglomeration stuff, firm-to-household in both directions, you know, access to markets, access to workers, access to jobs, right? We know fantastic complementarities between all these things. And so, you know, firms, households, infrastructure, again, you know, obvious complementarities, infrastructure, improving the business environment, but a vibrant business environment, raising tax revenue necessary to finance the infrastructure. So we know we've got what we want to have is dynamics, expectations, complementarities. So we're in, you know, my favourite world that I like to be in, a world with lots of multiple equilibria, cumulative causation, vicious circles, virtuous circles, poverty traps, dichotomous behaviour. You know, Asia did just fine. Africa's, you know, why have they diverged so much? So I want to do a little bit of theory, playing around with some very simple ingredients to capture some of the things on that list. In the first of the specific bits of LSE work that I want to talk about, and then also do a second one, which is, so ignore the top of that slide. It's some policy audiences have found it useful, ignore it. We haven't got time. Yeah, so I want to talk briefly through a couple of papers. One is this breaking into tradables, so a theory framework for thinking about some of the stuff I was talking about. And the second one's going to be a much more detailed look at Nairobi and a bit of modelling and calibration of the model on Nairobi. Okay, I think going about 20 minutes. Bit less, 15. Perfect. Okay. So let me try and give you a little bit of economic theory. Well, this is the motivating slide. The theory is going to come on the next 2 or 3. So questions, what are the interactions between urban form and urban function? In other words, so by urban form, you know, it's these capital stocks. You know, how does a city get built, right? An urban function is the business end. What are people in the city actually doing? You know, what sectors are they working in? What are they doing? What are the interactions between those things? And of course, I want to construct a, you know, very, very simple little framework where there's going to be a poverty trap. There's going to be an interactions between these things that might lead you to a good place or might lead you to a low level trap. So it's motivated by things I've already talked about, that dichotomous performance of Africa and Asia. And also by another fact about Africa, which people find a bit surprising, but is easily explicable in terms of what I'm going to show you, which is obviously African cities, yeah, they're people of low real incomes, but they have high nominal wages. Yeah, these are high cost, high wage cities. Low real wage, but you know, high price, high cost, high wage places. Now, there's no real paradox there, but it does surprise people a bit when I say that. And there are some scatter plots. On the left is manufacturing sector wages, with the browny orange being Africa, and GDP per capita on the horizontal. So Africa's got high wages, right? Nominal. It's just converted at official exchange rates or some approximation there too. And then living costs on the right-hand diagram. So there's that other little sort of stylized fact that we want to capture here. Okay, ingredients of such a model. It's going to be supply and demand, not much more than that. So I want to have labour demand, right? Urban function. What are people doing? Think of that as coming from two sectors. One is non-tradables, right? Yeah, maybe that's the informal sector, but it's not only the informal. It's sort of beer and cement, all these things that are produced locally for consumption in the city or the nation or the region, but not traded internationally. Okay, at a great extent. So non-tradables have diminishing returns because, I mean, the technology may be increasing, but what I mean by diminishing is there's a local market, and if you produce a lot more, the price will go down. So you're in a world of diminishing returns to expanding this. Whereas tradables, well, the price is fixed on world markets. If you're one small African country, you can produce as many T-shirts as you like without pushing the world price down any further. Okay, and maybe we're in a world of agglomeration economies and increasing returns and all that. So I want to have two functions, two sources of labour demand. And obviously I've got to close the model up properly the demand for non-tradables is a function of income generated, but that's easy. And there's labour supply, which is going to just be standard Alonso Mills-Muth sort of open city model. So let's take a fixed real wage outside, but then some urban costs. So the bigger the city, the higher the nominal wage has to be to cover your commuting costs, your rent, congestion costs, whatever. The bigger the city, the higher the nominal wage has to be to deliver the same outside fixed real wage, right? So the most basic ingredients. Okay, then I just want to play around with the shapes of those two things and tell you, two stories. One's going to be a very simple sort of poverty trap, just because of coordination failure between firms. The other one's going to be a little bit more subtle, that you're going to build the city the wrong way. So it's a sort of coordination failure between firms and developers and builders. The city just gets built in a way, remember that Luanda picture? Just gets built in a way that really doesn't function very well for the modern economy. Okay? Now, it's going to be very, very stylized, but let me try and sort of give you the ingredients. Right, the green line is labour demand. Okay, so the downward sloping bit is non-tradables. The more you produce, the price goes down. So on the vertical there, you've got the wage, it's labour demand curve. So the amount you can pay goes down, right? That's non-tradables. Then the weakly upward sloping bit is tradables. So there's some weak agglomeration economies there at a fixed price. Okay, so you're going down non-tradables because you're flooding the market with the damn things, right? But then, okay, so that's labour demand. Trust me, they splice together that way. Okay, I'm not going to say more than that. Labour supply is those upward sloping straight lines drawn for two different values, right? So the really steep ones, a kind of hopeless city where congestion costs rocket up immediately. So that the more people there are in the city, those urban costs, rents really go up steeply. The flatter one is a more efficient city in some sense. Okay, so what do we know? Well, if you're that high cost city, you're stuck doing non-tradables only. If you're a lower cost city, you're doing both. Surprise, surprise, big deal. Let me add one twist to that. So which one of those you're in depends both on that urban cost, the height of the labour supply thing, but also the position of the labour demand, right? The whole labour demand thing is going to be shifted to the right. The more income you have generating demand for non-tradables. So if you're receiving lots of foreign aid or lots of resource income, or big hinterland demanding stuff, then that curve is going to be out to the right. So there's a sort of Dutch disease story here, if you like. If you're getting a lot of, if you're getting your dollars not by producing tradable goods, but by being given them, or resource rents, then that's going to expand your non-tradable sector and crowd other stuff out. So, pretty standard ingredients, but put the bits together in your head, that way. So that two-step labour demand curve and some labour supply. Okay, there are just 3 of these figures. That's the second one I heard. Okay, well, a bit predictable. Let's turn up economies of scale. Let's blow up agglomeration economies in tradables. So instead of that thing sloping up weakly, let's give it a real, same downward slope than that. Okay. So high-cost cities just stuck producing non-tradables. The low-cost city, well, there are 3 equilibria, 3 intersections. The middle one's unstable. But we've got dichotomous behavior. There are multiple equilibria. You could be stuck at EL, or you could be at ET. Right? They're both intersections of that low-cost city labour supply curve with the labour demand curve. Right? But the point is, at EL, the wage is just a bit too high. The demand for non-tradables is a bit too big. Your city costs are a bit too high. Your nominal wage is too high. Remember, African nominal wages are high. Right? Your nominal wage is just a bit too high for you to be competitive in international markets. So you don't sort of get to the trigger point at which you can start the industrialization process. So there's a sort of coordination failure leaving you sitting there. Okay? Or maybe history or whatever, or good policy or something took you to the other one. So a very simple multiple equilibria story. But I do find it quite helpful thinking of this, thinking of tradables, non-tradables as these different functions. Okay, the third one, I suspect I'm not going to talk about the diagram, just give you the bottom line. How am I doing? 10? I'll move along fast. Okay, well, the final one of these. Let's do that in 2 periods and add some builders. And I'm just going to talk about this in words. Add some builders, okay? So if everyone's expecting you're just going to be stuck in this artisanal village, big village, but the Luanda thing, right? Then rents aren't going to be very high. And if rents aren't going to be very high, you're not going to build dense and tall, and you're just going to build low, because you're not anticipating the return. Okay. So you can be stuck there because negative expectations become self-fulfilling. Alternatively, suppose everyone thought, well, we're not in tradables now, but we're going to be, right? We're really going to be there. So rents are going to be high in the future. So we're really going to build now in anticipation of this. So these are private sector decisions, right? It's profit maximizing, to build tall, to build dense, okay? In that case, in a sense, you sort of overbuild in the first period, right? Which actually brings down wages a little bit, which triggers exactly the industrialization, gets the firms in, that triggers actually taking you there to the self-fulfilling expectations. So the coordination failure on the previous slide, in the very simple firm-to-firm thing, just agglomeration economies, but it sort of goes deeper, right? These interactions between urban form and urban function. Okay, I knew it was going to be foolish talking about 2 papers, but let me very, very quickly say a little bit about this other one. This is with Vern Henderson and Tanner Regan, and it's a very data-intensive piece of work on Nairobi, but also with some theory. I said at the beginning, early on, that we really need to put dynamics into these models properly. So let's build a theory model of a growing city, okay? Let's get really good data on Nairobi. Let's then calibrate the model, so fit it to that data, and then use the model to ask one particular experiment, which is what is the cost of being stuck with Kibera, Africa's worst slum, somewhere close to the center, but it's close to the centre. It should have formalised, but it hasn't for this institutional historical reasons. It's locked in. What is the cost to that inefficient land use? So that's really what we're doing in this paper. Yeah, a little bit on the model structure, I think. Okay. City's got lots of places. So we got space, a continuous variable, time, a continuous variable, building decisions going on at each place, potentially at each point in time, right? We really want to capture the informal, formal sector distinction. So that's basically two different building technologies, right? If you're in a slum, then you can't build tall, the walls will fall down, okay? But your building it's Lego blocks, it's malleable, right? The tin roof can be taken down and reused. So it's actually not a real forward-looking decision. There aren't sunk costs because you can dismantle it. It's Meccano, if anyone... People do know what Meccano is, good, or Lego if you don't, right? So that's the informal sector. Whereas, of course, the formal sector is basically the opposite. It's putty clay, right? So, you can design it however you like when you build it, but then it's locked in, it's sunk cost, and presumably the building will stand without being messed around for quite a long time, which we will work out in the course of calibration. What that time is. So, yeah, we've been taking these building decisions. So the questions are, where does what sort get built when, basically, okay? And the answer is, right, in the simple theory structure, right, okay. So a diagram, distance from the centre going down that way, time running that way. I think Julie pointed at this point. Yeah, okay. Distance, time. That bottom level is rural. That sloping thing is informal. That's malleable. Let's say what the building. The vertical axis is building volume. Okay. So let's take a particular point and see what happens to it through time. Well, it's outside the city for a long time. I should have said, let's have the city growing for some exogenous reason, right? So the city is just growing steadily. I should have said that. Then that's the city edge. City edge, the first development that takes place is informal. Now that depends on the relative construction costs and things in the model, but as drawn here, the first development is informal. But as you go through time, it gets more and more crowded. So total building volume per unit area is going up, right? Then at some date it formalizes, and that's where that little step is, okay? So the formal building has probably got less cover to area ratio, but more height. So the total volume delivered could actually go up or go down. There's a little step up as it's drawn there. Okay, so different technology, less building cover, more height. But then, of course, you're locked into it. Well, you're not locked in. You've sunk all this capital in anticipation of future growth, so it's not profitable to knock it down until some time has passed. When the city goes through a wave of redevelopment, you knock it all down and you build it again, right? So that's a time path in a particular place. Going the other way, that's a cross-section of the city. So outside is rural, slum on the edge, depending on parameters, and then these stages of development. But of course, what we know happens. Oh, wrong thing. Yeah, let's have some grit. Let's have some formalisation costs. So in that little interval, there's a formalisation cost. So the formal set of stuff doesn't get built till a little bit later, right? So it persists. And then that echoes right through time. So of course, if you've got different formalisation costs at different places, you've got a complete city hodgepodge. You've got, informal bits going next to formal at all different heights and the thing growing through time, okay? So that's the model. The data, well, there's Nairobi in height. Now, Tanner Reagan, the RA on this, did a fantastic amount of work, basically with aerial photographs, tracing out individual buildings for 2 time periods and overlaying them, so we know exactly what was demolished, what new buildings came in infill, and all that stuff. Not when stuff was demolished, that's true. That's not true, we only got 2 time periods. We've also, so we've got that aerial photography stuff, we've got some LiDAR for 1 time period for the height, we've got quite a lot of house prices and things and all that. So there are lots of descriptive things that validate the assumptions that I just talked about, things about, so that's these are distance to the centre on the horizontal. Red is slum, blue is formal, so you know, slums are flat, formal is downward sloping. Slums have high cover to area ratio, 60% of the land is covered in building, right? So it's low but dense. Dense at the centre, sloping down further out, and so on. The changes are quite astonishing. 3 minutes. Well, let me give you the headline number. 3 kilometres of the centre, 35% of buildings have been replaced in the last 12 years. In a developed country city, that would be hard. Best yet, 10%. So a third of the city torn down at that range. So these waves of fast-growing, that step function I showed you, it isn't too bad, right? You are demolishing stuff and rebuilding. Okay, so it is possible to take that model and all that data and calibrate. And if you do that, comparing formalisation at the optimal date for formalisation with never ever formalising, so suppose Quebec was never ever formalised, then that's costing you about $380 per square metre, which is about $12,000 a household. So you'd think compensation could be, that's the net. So if you fully compensated the slumlord, right, the surplus left over would be about $12,000 per household. So these are big numbers for inefficient land use. Okay, so you can give the slumlord everything you'd ever make in perpetuity, or the present value thereof, and still come out ahead. Now, there are no dislocation costs of messing around with social networks or anything in here, but interesting to put some numbers on. Right. I've got 6 policy points that I want to make. I will just read them out without talking about them. As I said at the beginning, it's a bit of a scattergun approach, but things, talking, we've done a lot of conferences in Africa, good links with a couple of mayors. So just talking to them. Things that I think matter. So this is policy stuff, but a little bit scattergun. 1, governance and the authorising environment. You need a big... Sorry, I said I'll just list them, not talk about them. You need an authorising environment such that mayors can do something. Obvious, not always there. You need the recognition that cities are going to happen and that they're good things, right? African politicians still don't like the urban proletariat very much, and almost all African cities